Genevieve pressed me against the floor-to-ceiling window, her red lips parting slightly. You always manage to see right through me, Harrison. I chuckled, pulling her slender waist close and leaning in to whisper in her ear. I don't just see through you. I also know you're wearing black lace tonight. Welcome to Apex System, an exciting story is about to begin. The crisp clink of champagne glasses instantly replaced the sound of tearing metal from the car crash that had been ringing in my ears just a second ago. I blinked hard. The warm blood that had been streaming down my forehead was gone, replaced by the blinding glare of the crystal chandeliers in this Manhattan penthouse ballroom. Good God. It felt like a surreal hangover. But I knew better than anyone that I wasn't dreaming. I had been reborn. I was back 3 years in the past, at the very family engagement dinner that had changed my destiny. Harrison, my dear brother, I know this sounds crazy, but I really can't help myself. I've fallen in love with Vanessa. Hearing that familiar, affected opening line, I turned my head. Standing before me was my brother, Declan, clad in a $100,000 custom suit. He was looking at me with a gaze as sincere as a used car salesman's, his hand tightly gripping a woman's. Vanessa, who, just 10 minutes ago, had been my fiancée in name. Vanessa's eyes were rimmed with red as she bit her lower lip. Cowering behind Declan like a startled fawn, her voice trembled as she said, Harrison, I'm sorry, but our feelings are real. You should marry Genevieve. She was Declan's original fiancée. That way, the family alliance won't be broken. Looking at this pair of scoundrels, I let out a cold sneer in my heart. In my previous life, it was at this very banquet that Declan staged a public coup, forcing the notorious Genevieve onto me and snatching away the seemingly pure Vanessa. Back then, I had refused in a fit of rage, only to fall into the reputation trap they had meticulously designed. Ultimately, I was kicked out of the family and died in a bizarre car accident. Just as I was about to strike back as I had in my past life, a clear electronic beep suddenly rang in my head, sounding much like a microwave finishing a pizza. Immediately after, a cold, emotionless mechanical female voice echoed clearly inside my skull. The voice informed me that the peak telepathy system had been activated, granting me the unrestricted ability to read the real-time inner monologues of anyone within a 10-meter radius. I froze for a second. A system? Heart reading? To verify whether this thing was just a hallucination, I narrowed my eyes and stared intently at Declan. Instantly, a crystal-clear echo, carrying his signature sinister tone, barged directly into my mind. Hurry up and lose your temper. You stubborn idiot. As long as you dare to reject the marriage today, Dad will definitely think you have no regard for the family's big picture. Besides, Genevieve's family, that crazy woman, is on the brink of bankruptcy. Once you take over that mess, the Sterling family's tens of billions in assets will all be mine. Incredible. It's actually real. I suppressed the urge to smirk in ecstasy and turned my gaze toward Vanessa. Please, just agree already. Harrison is such a boring stiff. He even audits the accounts when he buys me $1 million bag. If I go with Declan, I could be in Paris tomorrow for a private shopping spree. And I'll even manage to swindle the shares out of Harrison's hands. Vanessa's inner thoughts, brimming with greed and calculation, were more foul-smelling than a sewer. Standing at the head of the table, my father, Sterling, slammed his wine glass down, his face ashen. He was an absolute pragmatist, and at this moment, he was preparing to reprimand this farce. Enough. Declan, do you have any idea what nonsense you're spouting? Father had just begun to speak. I agree. I interrupted my father, picking up a glass of Pinot Noir from the table and giving it a gentle swirl. My tone was as casual as if I were ordering an Americano at Starbucks. The entire ballroom instantly fell into a deathly silence. The jazz band's saxophonist even hit a sour note in his surprise. What did you say? The hypocritical expression on Declan's face froze. He clearly hadn't expected this reaction from me. I said, It's a deal, brother. I flashed a flawless, radiant smile, strode up to him, and gave his shoulder a firm pat. Since you two are truly in love, how could I possibly be the one to tear you apart? Vanessa is all yours. As for Genevieve, I think she's great, I'll marry her. I clearly heard the expletive that slipped out of Declan's mind. He looked as miserable as if he'd just swallowed a whole live turtle, shell and all, completely unable to fathom what game I was playing. I didn't bother with their shocked expressions. I turned around, my gaze cutting through the crowd to land on a woman standing by the corner bar. Genevieve, the psycho-socialite Declan had mentioned. The troublemaker Manhattan's elite avoided like the plague. She was holding a martini, dressed in a provocative black velvet gown, watching the farce unfold with a cold detachment. I focused my attention on her, wanting to hear what kind of despair was currently consuming this woman who had been tossed to me like unwanted baggage. However, the voice that transmitted into my mind made my entire body shudder violently. Interesting. Harrison, the rumored good-for-nothing trust fund baby, is actually playing the wolf in sheep's clothing? Perfect. Using this marriage as cover, I can start shorting that shell tech company in Declan's hands tomorrow. I'll strip him of $20 million first and see how he likes that. My eyes widened. Good God, Declan, you idiot. Just what kind of terrifying apex predator did you actually let go? Holding my unfinished glass of red wine, I walked straight toward the corner bar through a crowd whose gazes avoided me as if I were the plague. The feeling was incredible. Like Moses parting the Red Sea. Except these pretentious Manhattan socialites were only clearing a path because they thought I was about to meet my ruin. Not far away, Declan had his arm around Vanessa, struggling to suppress an ecstatic smirk, looking every bit the fool who had just hit the jackpot in Vegas. He probably thought that foisting a crazy socialite with a hair-trigger temper and a near-bankrupt family onto me was his ultimate checkmate. I walked up to the bar and pulled out a barstool to sit down. Genevieve didn't even turn to look at me. She was absent-mindedly playing with the olive on the rim of her martini glass with her long, slender fingers. At this proximity, I could catch the faint scent of Tom Ford Black Orchid lingering on her, dangerous, and damnably captivating. Congratulations, Master Harrison. Genevieve finally turned her head, her deep blue eyes filled with undisguised mockery, on winning the title of Manhattan's greatest rebounder of the century. How does it feel to pick up the trash your brother didn't want? If this were the hot-headed version of me from my previous life, I probably would have been provoked by those words and stormed off by now. But now, the cold, mechanical female voice in my head chimed in dutifully, notifying me that the target's inner thoughts were being read. A second later, the frantic calculations running through Genevieve's mind poured into my brain like a waterfall. That idiot Declan actually thinks my family is bankrupt? He probably won't realize until the day he dies that half of Wall Street's capital is currently flowing through my offshore accounts. Perfect. I'll use this broken engagement as a cover to dump that entire secret hedge fund tomorrow and short the Sterling family's overvalued $100 million failure of a tech project. Harrison looks like a complete dimwit. 2. Once I've bled Declan dry, I'll kick that boy out of the game as well. It's absolutely perfect. I fought back the urge to whistle. Good God. This wasn't some bankrupt socialite. This was the most elusive, bloodthirsty shark on Wall Street, the phantom capital titan known as G, who struck terror into the hearts of countless top-tier traders. Was actually Genevieve, the woman the world dismissed as a madwoman? That moron Declan, for the sake of a gold digger like Vanessa, hadn't just thrown away a fortune. He had practically handed me the nuclear detonator to blow his entire family conglomerate sky high. I looked at her cold, elegant face, and the corners of my mouth couldn't help but curl upward. What are you laughing at? Have you lost your mind? Genevieve frowned slightly, her real-world demeanor still projecting that same abrasive, standoffish coldness. But through my mind-reading system, her inner thoughts betrayed her confusion. Why isn't this kid angry? The decisiveness he showed just now when stepping up to take the fall was nothing like the cowardly playboy the rumors describe. And the way he's looking at me, damn it, has he figured something out? I'm laughing because I think I've hit the jackpot. I leaned in closer, intentionally lowering my voice to a whisper that only the two of us could hear. Declan thinks he's discarded a burden, but I know I've just secured the ace that wins the entire game. Gee, don't mistake me for my idiot brother. The hand Genevieve was holding her wine glass with faltered for an imperceptible second. What nonsense are you talking about? She let out a cold snort, and drained the wine in her glass in one gulp. I'm nothing more than a near-bankrupt troublemaker. You expect me to help you reclaim your family inheritance? Keep dreaming. Is that so? I looked into her eyes, my smile growing more radiant as I casually dropped a keyword I had just overheard from her mind. Then what if I told you that I'm also very interested in that failed tech project valued at $100 million, the one you're planning to target tomorrow? The air seemed to freeze at that very moment. Genevieve whipped her head around to stare at me, a flash of extreme shock and dangerous murderous intent flickering in those beautiful blue eyes. In the system, her inner thoughts were deafening. How could he know about my short-selling plan? Not even my top analysts know this secret. This guy Harrison. Just how deep does he hide? Watching her struggle to maintain her composure while clearly being struck by sheer terror, I knew that this arrogant Wall Street she-devil had finally taken an interest in me, and this was merely the perfect opening to my plan for revenge. 3 days later, in the morning, at the Manhattan Financial District, in the top-floor boardroom of the Sterling family conglomerate, the air was thick with the scent of cigars and high-end espresso. But the atmosphere was colder than the Alaskan tundra. Today was the family's annual investment summit. My father, Sterling, sat at the head of the long mahogany conference table, looking like a medieval king ready to take heads at any moment. Declan, wearing one of his nauseating custom pinstripe suits, stood before the holographic projection screen, spouting a feverish sales pitch for his Apex Tech project. Vanessa sat beside him, twirling a Cartier pen in her hand, putting on the facade of a high-powered career woman. Father, members of the board, Vertex Tech's current valuation has already reached $100 million, with just another $50 million in funding. Its virtual reality technology will sweep across all of Silicon Valley. Declan waved his arms excitedly, looking like a clown desperately hawking expired hot dogs during a Super Bowl halftime show. Considering Harry has just gotten engaged, I think it's time for him to step up and take on a major responsibility. I am willing to hand over this project with its boundless future for him to lead. The people in the conference room nodded one after another, thinking Declan was truly a magnanimous elder brother. But the familiar mechanical buzzing in my mind had already begun to ring, and the system automatically locked onto the pair of scumbags sitting across from me. Hurry up and agree. You moron! Declan's inner thoughts were so sharp they nearly pierced my meninges. Vertex Tech's core and D team collectively resigned yesterday, and the funds in the account were long ago diverted by me to cover gambling debts in Las Vegas. As long as you sign today, you'll be the one taking the fall for this 50 million. And the old man will definitely skin you alive before kicking you out of the house. Vanessa's inner thoughts followed immediately, laced with a smug, mean-spirited edge. Declan is a genius. Once Harrison goes bankrupt and gets kicked out, that Manhattan penthouse will be mine. I need to head to Fifth Avenue tonight and buy a few pairs of Christian Louboutins to celebrate. Listening to the internal monologues of this villainous duo, I almost couldn't hold back a laugh. If this were my past life, I really would have been foolish enough to take the bait. But now, sorry, folks, times have changed. I stood up unhurriedly, fastened the button of my suit jacket, and cleared my throat. Father, Declan's speech was truly magnificent. I am deeply moved by his talent and his sense of brotherhood. A smug curve tugged at the corner of Declan's mouth. He clearly thought the fish had taken the hook. But, I said, shifting gears with a tone so sincere I could have run for governor. Precisely because Apex Tech is so vital and valued at 100 million. How could I possibly take it away from someone else? Declan has poured so much heart and soul into this project. It deserves to be the most brilliant achievement on his resume as successor. I strongly suggest that not only should Declan be given full authority, but to demonstrate the family's confidence, this $50 million budget should be guaranteed by his private fund. The moment those words left my mouth, Declan's smile froze on his face as if he had just swallowed a massive glob of expired wasabi. My father, Sterling, narrowed his hawk-like eyes and nodded approvingly. Harrison is right, Declan, since you're so optimistic about this. The project is entirely yours. Risk-sharing, don't disappoint me. But, father, Declan stammered, a layer of cold sweat instantly breaking out on his forehead. The Cartier pen in Vanessa's hand dropped straight to the floor, and the scream in her mind vibrated so loudly it made my brain ache. Damn it! How did that idiot Harrison suddenly wise up? Where on earth would Declan get 50 million for a guarantee? I didn't bother acknowledging their pale faces. I casually pulled a dust-covered blue folder from the stack of documents on the table and tossed it down. As for me, I'll take over this neglected Deepwater Port Logistics project. A wave of whispers rippled through the conference room. Deepwater Port Logistics was a crumbling, small-scale project that had been losing money for years. Located in a derelict industrial zone in Brooklyn, it had long since been relegated to the cold storage by the board of directors. But no one knew that just last night, while accompanying Genevieve to inspect that dilapidated port, I had intercepted top-secret intelligence from her brilliant mind through telepathy. Tomorrow, New York City Hall would secretly pass a document designating the area where Deepwater Port Logistics is located as a brand-new federal tax-free high-tech zone. The value of this land would decuple within 24 hours, reaching a staggering 500 million. I watched Declan's pathetic display, clearly on the verge of wetting his pants, yet still inwardly mocking me for choosing a trash project, and flashed him a flawless, quintessential American smile. The game has only just begun, dear brother. At Long Island's premier golf club, the sunlight was as bright as California orange juice. Dressed in casual Ralph Lauren, I was leisurely lining up a putt on the green, less than 10 meters behind me, under the shade of the lounge area umbrellas. Declan and Vanessa were pretending to sip smoothies, though their ears were pricked up like radar dishes. Ever since the top-secret news broke that the value of the Deepwater Port Logistics land had doubled, my father, Sterling, has been looking at me like I'm a literal money tree. As for Declan, the mess he's in with Apex Tech is driving him to the brink of insanity. Not only has he failed to plug the $50 million hole, but he's also struggling to suppress the news that his core team has jumped ship. He's like a desperate gambler in Las Vegas who's lost everything, frantically looking for one big win to turn the tide. I know my brother all too well. As long as it's something I've set my sights on, even if it's a piece of moldy pizza, he'll convinced it's a priceless treasure and feel compelled to snatch it away. I pulled out my phone, pretending not to notice them. I deliberately lowered my voice, speaking into the receiver with an air of extreme urgency and secrecy. Yes, Nova Biomedical. I just got the inside scoop. Their new cancer drug will pass the FDA's secret approval tomorrow. I don't care what it takes, before the market closes on Friday. Even if you have to sink $1 billion into it. Secure the controlling interest for me. This must be kept from Declan and the board at all costs. This is my trump card to replace him. After hanging up, I sank the golf ball into the hole with precision. Simultaneously, the delightful system notification chime rang out in my mind right on cue. Declan's inner thoughts, so ecstatic they were almost convulsive, instantly exploded inside my skull. Nova Biomedical? A new cancer drug? I knew that lucky bastard Harrison was sitting on something big. No wonder he's been so cozy with Genevieve. That Wall Street witch. Lately, if I intercept this and drop $1 billion to buy the company first, not only will it cover the losses at Vertex Tech, but the old man will definitely hand over the entire family legacy to me immediately. Harrison, you want to replace me? In your dreams. Immediately following was Vanessa's greedy, calculating voice. My God, $1 billion windfall project. I need to hurry and mortgage all my jewelry and funds to quietly buy up retail shares. I'm going to make a killing this time. Listening to this perfect duet of fools, I almost couldn't suppress a laugh. Nova Biomedical? That was nothing more than a classic Wall Street scam Genevieve had casually mentioned while we were eating beef Wellington yesterday. That company has no new anti-cancer drug. There isn't so much as a single lab rat in their facilities. Not only that, but the SEC has had them under surveillance for a long time, ready to issue an asset freezing warrant at any moment. 3 days later, at the routine family meeting, the real show began. Declan, like a rooster injected with adrenaline, kicked open the boardroom doors with his head held high. He brandished a thick equity transfer agreement and slammed it down directly in front of our father. Sterling, father, members of the board, times have changed. Declan's voice cracked with excitement. I have just completed a monumental acquisition that will change our family's destiny forever. I have secured absolute controlling interest in Nova Biomed. The meeting room erupted instantly. His father frowned, questioning him sternly. Nova Biomed? Where did you get the funds for this? Declan shot me a triumphant glance, and the system immediately transmitted his inner thoughts to me. Tremble. Harrison, I mortgaged Apex Tech, put up my entire trust fund and all the villas in my name, and even took out high-interest loans from the mafia to scrape together $1 billion. As long as the approval goes through tomorrow, I'll make $10 billion. In reality, he cleared his throat and said boastfully, Father, I utilized some private resources and bridge financing, a full $1 billion. While there are risks, the profit margin is 500%. Harrison originally wanted to swallow this prize for himself, but fortunately, I moved quickly and secured it for the family first. With that, he and Vanessa shared a smile, as if they were already seated upon the throne of Manhattan. I immediately played along, gasping sharply as I bolted upright. I slammed my hands onto the table, my face a mask of disbelief and fury. Declan, are you insane? That was the ace up my sleeve I'd been tracking for half a month. You actually hijacked my project? My acting was worthy of an Oscar. Seeing my frantic, helpless, and broken state, Declan laughed even more boisterously, while Vanessa even cast me a look filled with disdain and pity. All is fair in war, my dear brother, Declan said, patting my shoulder. He leaned in and whispered in my ear. In the business world, you're still too green. Now, sit back and watch how I steal every bit of the spotlight that belonged to you. I lowered my head, my shoulders trembling slightly, looking every bit like a loser enduring humiliation. But I was biting my lip desperately just to keep myself from bursting into laughter on the spot. Stealing the spotlight? By all means. I'm already counting down. Tomorrow morning at 9, when the NASDAQ opens and federal agents storm the shell offices of Nova Biotech. My dear brother, your $1 billion will instantly turn into a pile of waste paper. You won't just be bankrupt. You'll be facing endless debt collection from the mob. The countdown to collapse has already begun. And I cannot wait to see you fall from heaven into hell. Manhattan's dazzling nightscape flickered outside the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows like a flowing river of diamonds. To celebrate the unexpected windfall from the Deepwater Port Logistics project, the Sterling family had booked the entire Sky Garden at the Peninsula Hotel for a gala. I knew, of course, that this was merely the final revelry before the storm. At this moment, there were likely less than 12 hours left until Nova Biotech is seized by federal agents. I stood in the dim backstage corridor, away from the dance floor, holding a glass of Macallan on the rocks as I quietly processed the various intel gathered through my mind-reading system. Outside in the ballroom, Declan was preening like a peacock, flaunting his soon-to-be $10 billion empire, while Vanessa bragged to a circle of socialites about the custom Hinckley yacht she was about to order. The sheer arrogance of these two idiots had reached a nauseating level. Just then, the faint sound of high heels clicking against the Persian rug drifted from the end of the corridor. Immediately after, that familiar, dangerously alluring scent of black orchid perfume filled my nostrils. I didn't turn around, merely letting out a soft chuckle. Shouldn't you be out there enjoying your royal inspection as the Queen of Wall Street? What brings you to this dark corner? Genevieve, clad in an aggressively cut deep V black haute couture gown, glided silently to my side like a black swan in the night. She didn't say a word. Instead, she snatched the whiskey from my hand and, using the same edge I had just drunk from, tilted her slender neck back to take a sip. What are you hiding, Harrison? Genevieve tilted her head, her blue eyes, reminiscent of a cold Siberian spring, shimmering with a captivating intensity in the dim light. The Deepwater Port project has made you the star of the show in front of the old man, while that fool Declan is clearly digging his own grave. Everything seems to be going a bit too smoothly. Isn't smooth a good thing? My dear fiancé? I turned around, leaning my back against the cold marble wall. Hands tucked lazily into my suit pockets as I looked at her. Without warning, the system began frantically scrolling through Genevieve's inner thoughts. This is too bizarre. The tax-exempt permit for the Deepwater port was top-secret information I bought for $10 million from a City Hall informant. How did he know about it in advance? And Nova Biomed is a complete Wall Street pig-butchering scam that even I was nearly fooled by. How did Harrison, a total hack who can't even read a financial statement, know how to set a trap for Declan to walk into? Is he a genius? Or does he have some trump card I don't know about? The wariness and curiosity in her heart were like a fire, burning brighter and fiercer. In reality, she suddenly took a step forward, the tips of her high heels nearly touching my leather shoes. She tilted her chin up slightly, approaching me with aggressive intensity, as her body heat and fragrance instantly enveloped me. Don't use those platitudes meant for fools on me, Harrison. Genevieve extended a finger tipped with dark red polish, tapping it lightly against my chest. Her voice was husky and seductive. Who exactly are you? How much longer do you plan on playing the part of that useless, spoiled brat? I looked at her face, so close, breathtakingly beautiful, and could even see her long eyelashes trembling slightly. I had to admit, this woman possessed a lethal attraction that could easily shatter a man's reason, but I was no longer the pushover fool from my previous life. Who am I? I reached out abruptly, grabbing her slender waist that felt like it could be held in one hand. With a slight pull, I pressed her body tightly against mine. Genevieve clearly hadn't expected me to strike back, and a flicker of panic flashed through her deep blue eyes. Are you crazy? She hissed, trying to break free. But the arm I had wrapped around her waist remained as immovable as an iron vice. You're the one who provoked me, Jen, I whispered, lowering my head until my lips were almost brushing her earlobe, feeling her heart rate suddenly quicken. Don't you always think you're in control of everything? The mysterious Miss G of Wall Street. Did you think all of Manhattan was your chessboard? Her body stiffened instantly, and the inner thoughts transmitted through the system were filled with a tremor of disbelief. He called me G? He really knows everything. Damn it, where did my defenses fail? Just how many of my secrets has he seen through? I let out a soft chuckle, my warm breath brushing against her neck. Don't be nervous. I'm not your enemy. We're in the same boat now, aren't we? You handle the mess from shorting Declan, and I'll take care of his people. A pleasure doing business with you. Genevieve took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the shock in her heart. She suddenly stopped struggling, instead reaching out her arms to wrap them around my neck. Her gaze shifted from panic back to that fiercely wild provocation, her red lips parting slightly. You always manage to see through me, Harrison. But even if you've seen my whole card, do you really dare to play this dangerous game with me? What was this? The ultimate test from the female crocodile of Wall Street? A wicked smirk curled at the corners of my mouth as my grip on her waist suddenly tightened, pinning her directly against the floor-to-ceiling window behind her. Behind her lay the million-dollar night view of Manhattan. But before my eyes was the wildest woman I had ever seen in my life. I leaned down close to her ear, speaking in a voice so low only she could hear. I can do more than just read your mind. I also know you're wearing black lace tonight. You, Genevieve's pupils dilated sharply, and for the first time, a genuine look of flustered indignation and bewilderment appeared on that habitually frost-cold face. Watching her look so defeated yet sexy, I let out a loud laugh and released my hold. I turned and walked toward the boisterous ballroom, leaving her alone backstage, her mind screaming with the frantic urge to tear me limb from limb. The spark has been ignited. The game is getting more and more interesting. As I stepped out of the backstage corridor and back into the brilliantly lit ballroom, I felt like a quarterback who had just thrown a game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. Genevieve's frustrated gasps, left behind in the shadows, put me in high spirits, but the show was clearly far from over. I had just reached the champagne tower when the pungent scent of Chanel No. 5 wafted over. It was Vanessa, holding a glass of pink champagne and perched atop her sequin stilettos. She glided toward me like a piranha that had caught the scent of blood. Harrison. Vanessa lowered her voice, her eyes instantly welling with tears as she looked at me with a pitiful expression. You look so charming tonight. I've been looking for a chance to talk to you alone. I raised an eyebrow, and the system immediately chimed in with that wonderful mechanical female voice. Target locked. Immediately following that, Vanessa's nauseating inner thoughts were thrust right into my face. My God, Harrison just secured that $500 million Deepwater port project in the boardroom. He's practically a gold mine right now. That idiot Declan put all his money into Nova Biotech. If anything goes wrong, I won't even have enough for Hermes Birkin. I need to hurry up and win Harrison back as my backup. Even if I have to spend the night with him, I have to trick him out of those Deepwater port shares. I suppressed the urge to splash champagne in her face and feigned a look of deep affection. Oh, is that so? But you're already Declan's fiancé now. My dear Vanessa. Declan forced me into that. Vanessa leaned into my shoulder, one hand restlessly stroking my suit lapel, her voice so sultry it could practically drip. In truth, it's still you I love. That bastard Declan not only hits me, But he doesn't even give me an allowance. Can we get back together? I can tell you all of Declan's secrets. Secret? What secret? I intentionally raised my voice just enough so that Declan, who was busy bragging to a few Wall Street bigwigs nearby, and our father, Sterling, could hear. It's about how he embezzled. Vanessa was about to continue her fabrication when she suddenly realized the music had stopped at some point, and several pairs of eyes were staring straight at us. Declan's face instantly turned the color of raw liver as he stormed over toward us. Harrison, what the hell are you doing? Get away from my woman! Declan roared like a crazed bull. Your woman? I took a step back and spread my hands, flashing an innocent smile. Brother, you've got it all wrong. It was your woman who came running to me in tears, saying you're on the verge of bankruptcy and begging me to take her in. The entire room erupted in an uproar. My father Sterling's face instantly darkened, looking like New York Harbor right before a storm. You're full of shit. Declan pointed at my nose in a fit of rage, while Vanessa turned deathly pale, stammering her denial. No, I didn't. Declan, let me explain. He was the one who seduced me. I didn't give them a chance to breathe. The mind-reading system in my head had already organized all their trump cards for me. I let out a cold sneer, my gaze piercing straight through Declan. Seduced you? Vanessa, do you really think I don't know about that secret account of yours in the Cayman Islands, where $5 million was just transferred? That was public money Declan secretly embezzled from Vertex Tech's R&D funds, all just to buy you that damn Saint-Seek yacht. As soon as these words were spoken, it was like a bomb had been dropped in the banquet hall. Declan's inner thoughts were filled with panic screams. How could he know about the offshore accounts? That was top secret. I didn't stop. I turned to look at my father, Sterling, my tone turning icy. Father, do you really believe the billion Declan used to acquire Nova Bio came entirely from his so-called private resources? Mind reading. Oh no, my investigation team has looked into this thoroughly. He didn't just mortgage every asset under his name. He also secretly embezzled $10 million from the family trust's emergency reserves, and even took out a $30 million high-interest loan from the Italian mob in Brooklyn. What? The cigar in my father's hand fell to the floor. He stood up abruptly, pointing at Declan and roaring. You dared to touch the family trust? Are you insane? No, father, please let me explain. Declan's entire body was trembling, his legs going weak as he nearly collapsed to his knees. As long as Nova Biomed's new cancer drug gets approved tomorrow, I'll make $10 billion. I can fill all those holes immediately. Harrison is just jealous of me. He's slandering me. Jealous of you? I tilted my head back and laughed unrestrainedly. Declan, you're not just a thief. You're an absolute moron. At 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'd love to see how you plan to use that pile of worthless shell stocks to pay back the mob's loan sharks. I drained the champagne in my hand and slammed the glass onto the floor. The sound of shattering glass rang out with startling clarity in the deathly silent banquet hall. Watching this pair of scoundrels tremble in disgrace under the contemptuous gazes of the crowd, I felt that this was the true highlight of tonight's revelry. However, I knew that a mad dog like Declan would bite when backed into a corner. The real endgame is only just beginning. After the farce at the gala concluded, the Manhattan night breeze felt fresher against my face than ever before. I slung my suit jacket over my shoulder and whistled as I headed toward the Peninsula Hotel's underground VIP parking lot. As I approached my silver Aston Martin, the system in my mind, which had been silent all this time, suddenly let out a piercing red alert. Warning: extremely lethal malice detected within a 10-meter radius. I raised an eyebrow and came to a halt, pretending to fumble in my pocket for my car keys. Immediately after, Declan's exasperated, even murderously frantic inner thoughts slithered into my mind like a venomous snake. He was hiding in the back seat of a black Maybach parked not far away. Harrison, you goddamn bastard! Always stealing the spotlight. Always sabotaging my $10 billion empire. Since you're pushing me to the brink, then you can just go to hell. I spent $1 million to hire a cleaner from the Brooklyn Mafia. He's waiting at the intersection of Park Avenue and 42nd Street in a modified heavy-duty Ford pickup. The moment your car passes that intersection, boom, you'll be crushed into mincemeat. Just like, anyway, you're dead meat. Once you're nothing but a pile of rotting flesh, all those assets will still be mine. Hearing this, my blood instantly began to boil, not out of fear, but from a sort of morbid excitement. In my previous life, I died in exactly this kind of inexplicable accidental car crash. Declan, oh Declan, you stupid pig. You really have no creativity at all. Using the same script for 2 lifetimes, but this time, I'm the director. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. Accompanied by the sexy roar of the V12, I drove straight out of the underground garage. In the rearview mirror, that black Maybach followed at a distance like a skulking hyena. That psychopath Declan clearly wanted to witness the gruesome sight of my death with his own eyes. Midnight on Park Avenue was as empty as a runway. I floored the accelerator, and the Aston Martin tore through the streets like a bolt of silver lightning. The streetlights on either side blurred into streaks of light. To avoid losing me, the Maybach had no choice but to accelerate desperately, clinging tightly to my tail. Less than 500 meters remained until the intersection at 42nd Street. The system's notification pinged again. This time, it wasn't just Declan's inner thoughts. It had also tapped into the mind of the assassin lurking in the shadows to the left of the intersection. I see the target vehicle's lights. It's moving fast. The boss said to aim for the lead car in front. Doesn't matter what model it is. As soon as it crosses the line, hit it directly from the side. 3, 2, 1. I sneered and gripped the steering wheel tight. Just as we were less than 50 meters from the intersection and the traffic light flipped to yellow, I slammed on the brakes, yanked the handbrake, and cut the wheel hard to the right. The Aston Martin's tires let out a sharp shriek against the asphalt. The car instantly executed a perfect drift on the spot, coming to a steady halt in the shadow of a massive roadside billboard. All its lights extinguished. The entire sequence took only 2 seconds. The Maybach following behind, traveling too fast to react, saw its driver instinctively floor the accelerator. It shot right past my position, taking my place as the lead car charging into the intersection. The moment the Maybach's nose poked into the intersection, a beastly engine roar erupted from the shadows on the left. A massive black heavy-duty Ford pickup, like an out-of-control armored vehicle, slammed into the side of the Maybach at a speed of at least 100 miles per hour. Bang boom! The ear-piercing screech of tearing metal and shattering glass echoed through the Manhattan night sky. The Maybach was sent flying like a battered tin toy, flipping twice in the air before slamming heavily into a roadside fire hydrant. A geyser of water instantly shot into the sky, mingling with the thick black smoke billowing from the wreckage. I rolled down the window, lit a cigar, and took a deep drag. Inside the system, the last thing heard from Declan was a soul-wrenching scream, followed by dead silence. I knew he wasn't dead. That custom-armored Maybach had saved his miserable life, but it would be enough to keep him bedridden in a hospital for the better part of a year. More importantly, when he wakes up tomorrow morning, what awaits him will be a federal arrest warrant and the relentless pursuit of the mob. I exhaled a smoke ring, watching the back of the Ford pickup driver as he fled in a panic from the scene of the accident, a grim, reaper-like smile curling at the corners of my mouth. This is what happens when you cross a telepathic avenger. Now, it's time to claim my true prize. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the heavy clouds over Manhattan, the entirety of Wall Street was already in an absolute frenzy over the massive upheaval within the Sterling family. I sat in the leather executive chair of the chairman's office on the top floor of the Sterling building, legs crossed atop the expansive mahogany desk, holding a cup of freshly brewed geisha coffee. On the 80-inch LCD TV mounted on the wall, the morning news was scrolling by. Last night, Nova Biomedical was summarily seized by the SEC on suspicion of a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. Simultaneously, Declan Sterling, the eldest son of the Sterling family, was involved in a severe car accident. He has since been formally arrested by the FBI in his hospital bed, facing multiple charges of financial fraud and embezzlement. It is reported that he is also being hunted across the city by New York's underground syndicates over massive predatory loans. The screen flashed images of Declan, encased in heavy plaster casts and shackled in handcuffs, struggling on his hospital bed with a face full of despair. As for Vanessa, word is she tried to flee last night with a few bags of so-called designer jewelry, only to be intercepted at the airport by the loan sharks. She's likely in some Brooklyn basement right now, signing away her life. I took a satisfied sip of my coffee. 10 minutes ago, my father, Sterling, who looked as if he had aged 10 years overnight, signed this unconditional share transfer agreement with a trembling hand. He had no other choice. The tax-free zone permit for the Deepwater Port Logistics Hub was officially issued this morning, and the valuation of that land has skyrocketed to a staggering $800 million. I am the only one who can save the family conglomerate from being dragged down by Declan's wreckage. From now on, the Sterling Empire is under my command. As night fell, lazy French chansons drifted through the $50 million Tribeca penthouse, the very one Vanessa had once coveted, boasting New York's most luxurious 360-degree panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows. The apartment made the glittering lights of all Manhattan seem to kneel in submission at its feet, to the new king of Wall Street. Cheers. Genevieve carried 2 glasses of chilled Dom Perignon, walking toward me across the expensive cashmere carpet with bare feet, moving like an elegant Persian cat. Tonight, she wore a draped burgundy silk slip dress. The smooth fabric clung to her perfect curves, exuding a lethal sexiness amidst her effortless poise. I took the champagne and naturally slid my arm around her slender waist, pulling her into my embrace. And a toast to the most cold-blooded ghost queen of Wall Street, I said with a smile, clinking my glass against hers. I heard you shorted Declan's shell companies today and cleared $300 million? You move fast. General, $350 million. Thank you, Genevieve replied, tilting her slender neck back to take a sip of champagne. Her deep blue eyes shimmered with a mix of cunning and intoxication. Who would have thought that the trust fund brat once mocked by all of Manhattan would not only seize control of the family empire without shedding a drop of blood, but also hand-deliver his own brother to hell? Harrison, you are an absolute madman. In my mind, That familiar mechanical buzz rang out right on cue. I narrowed my eyes slightly, bracing myself for whatever schemes might still be lingering in her mind. However, this time, the inner voice transmitted into my skull made my heart skip a violent beat. He won. He didn't just win the entire empire. He completely conquered me. Too. Damn it, why is this feeling of being totally seen through, of being subjugated, so addictive? He looks absolutely lethal right now. So sexy it hurts. I don't even care what methods he used anymore. I just want him. There were no cold calculations. No haughty defenses, only pure, burning hormones and total surrender. Like a raging fire. Hearing these unreserved, heartfelt words, I could no longer suppress the smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. I casually tossed the 2 champagne flutes onto the thick carpet, where they landed with a dull thud. What are you laughing at? Genevieve raised an eyebrow slightly, a hint of provocative danger glinting in her eyes. I'm laughing because I suddenly remembered something very important. I lowered my head until my nose was almost touching hers. The scent of her black orchid perfume mingled with the intoxicating aroma of champagne, creating a heady, mesmerizing blend. What is it? Her breathing began to quicken, and her chest rose and fell slightly. Last night backstage, I believe I mentioned that I knew you had prepared black lace. My fingers slid slowly upward along the silky hem of her dress, my gaze deepening with predatory intent. Now, as the new head of the Sterling family, I feel it is necessary to personally inspect my spoils of war. Genevieve's pupils constricted sharply, a stunning flush creeping across her face. But she didn't shrink back. Instead, she reached out, hooking her arms tightly around my neck and tilting her head back to lock her captivating blue eyes onto mine. Then let's see if you have the stomach to handle it, Master Harrison, she whispered, biting her lower lip in a final challenge. I wasted no more words, leaning down to silence those defiant red lips once and for all. Outside the window, the neon lights of Manhattan continued to flicker, and the massive gears of Capitol rolled relentlessly forward through the night. But at this moment, inside the penthouse, there was only the reverie belonging to 2 apex predators. I held the woman in my arms, looking down upon this concrete jungle that belonged to me, and silently whispered a word of thanks to the system in my heart. Living this life once more. From the betrayal at the engagement dinner to now standing atop the summit of Wall Street. This game, I have cleared it. 6 months into wielding absolute power over the Sterling Empire, I have become completely accustomed to the air of Manhattan. That scent, a mixture of money, desire, and power, is far more addictive than even the finest Cuban cigars. Tonight is the Sotheby's Spring Auction, held at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Dressed in a custom-tailored, dark-patterned tuxedo from Seville Row, I entered the venue with Genevieve on my arm. She wore a deep sea blue gown embellished with silver diamond shards. With every step, she looked like a shimmering siren, drawing the gaze of every male in the room. Of course, those gazes now held nothing but pure awe. The entirety of Wall Street knew that the man standing beside her was Harrison Sterling, the man recently dubbed the new tyrant of Wall Street after orchestrating the hostile takeovers of 2 legacy investment banks in a single week. Boring socializing, Genevieve complained in a low voice. She took 2 glasses of champagne from a waiter's tray and handed one to me. If it weren't for that authentic Van Gogh, I'd rather be back in the penthouse reading a couple more short sale reports. Be patient, darling. I smiled and took a sip of champagne. In my mind, the long silent notification sound of the system began to hum softly. To me, this mind-reading system was no longer a survival tool, but rather a magnificent cheat code. For instance, right now, the old-school oil tycoon Morgan, sitting diagonally in front of us, was rubbing his bald head while calculating maliciously in his mind. The system accurately broadcasted his inner thoughts. This brat Harrison has been too arrogant lately. He wants that Van Gogh. Fine. The starting price is $5 million. I'll bid it all the way up to $20 million. The moment he gets caught up in the heat and calls out $25 million, I'll pull out immediately. Let him pay an extra $20 million to learn a lesson. Consider it venting some frustration for my near-bankrupt energy company. I almost couldn't stifle a laugh. These old men, who fancy themselves the elite, are even worse at playing games than my moronic brother, Declan. The auction soon reached the grand finale. The Van Gogh painting. The starting bid was $5 million. I lazily raised my paddle. $10 million. As expected, Morgan took the bait and immediately followed up. $15 million. $20 million. I didn't even blink. My tone as casual as if I were buying a head of cabbage at a wet market. A dead silence fell over the room as everyone turned their gaze toward Morgan. Old Morgan's hands were trembling with excitement. He had already planned out exactly how he would mock me as a sucker at the gala dinner. He raised his paddle, his voice booming. $24 million. Within the system, his inner thoughts were roaring with laughter. Keep going. Bid $25 million. The moment you do, I'm out. I lowered my paddle, leaned back against the chair, and rested my crossed hands on my knees. Turning toward the auctioneer on stage, I flashed a regretful smile. A gentleman does not take what another loves. Since Mr. Morgan is so fond of it, I shall graciously step aside. Thud. The auction gavel fell heavily. 24 million. Sold. Congratulations, Mr. Morgan. I saw old Morgan's face instantly turn from a flushed red to a deep purplish hue. He clutched his chest, gasping for air. His energy company's liquid assets amounted to exactly 25 million. No, a single painting had completely drained his cash flow. Did you use that terrifying intuition of yours again? Genevieve leaned in close to my ear, her breath sweet and warm. I bet you didn't even want that painting at all. I only want you, Jane. I turned my head and pressed a kiss onto her cheek. After the gala ended, we settled into the back seat of the stretch Rolls-Royce. Outside the window, the neon lights of Manhattan flickered by. Genevieve pulled a bottle of Macallan from the car's bar cabinet and poured 2 glasses. By the way, she said, handing me a glass with a hint of playfulness in her eyes. My assistant went to Rikers Island for a charity visit today. Guess who she saw? Let me guess, my dear older brother? I raised an eyebrow. I didn't just see him. I took photos. Genevieve let out a soft laugh. Declan isn't having a very good time in there. Although the 30 million he owed the Brooklyn Mafia was offset by his assets being seized by the feds, the mob clearly has no intention of letting him off the hook. No, not only does he have to scrub every toilet in the prison daily, but he reportedly broke 3 ribs in the shower last week. He was crying and screaming to see you, saying he knows he was wrong. See me? He's as naive as ever. I swirled my wine glass. And what about Vanessa? She's even worse off. The loan shark seized all her designer goods and sold her to the seediest underground casino in Atlantic City to work as a bunny girl dealer. I heard she was brutally beaten last week for stealing half a glass of a customer's beer. Now, she tells everyone she meets that she used to be the mistress of the Sterling family. And everyone treats her like she's insane. Listening to the fate of that despicable pair, I felt no ripple of emotion, only the light sense of relief that comes from finally sweeping trash into the incinerator. The carriage fell silent. Genevieve suddenly leaned against my shoulder, her deep blue eyes staring at me without blinking. The system chimed once again. This guy can always see through everyone. Genevieve grumbled inwardly. If he really can see through me, does he know that tonight, under this dress, I'm wearing that dark red Victoria's Secret set he likes most? Does he know I pushed back all of tomorrow's meetings just to stay in bed with him? The smile at the corners of my mouth gradually deepened. Setting my wine glass aside, I pulled her onto my lap in one swift motion. What are you laughing at now? Genevieve let out a soft gasp. Startled by my sudden movement, I lowered my head, my fingers sliding gently over the invisible zipper on the side of her dress. Leaning close to her ear, I whispered, I'm laughing because I know you've cleared all your meetings for tomorrow, and I must say, dark red is indeed my favorite color. Genevieve's eyes widened instantly, shock and embarrassment flickering through them before melting into a state of pure, unbridled passion. She grabbed my tie and yanked me toward her. Harrison, you really are a goddamn devil, and you are the hell I most willingly fall into. As the Rolls-Royce glided smoothly along, the partition slowly rose. For someone with the power of telepathy, dominating Wall Street might be a perfect game, but the psychological sparring with this woman is the ultimate, tireless revelry of my life. The end.